Welcome, welcome. We are live. It is a Friday. It is dismally gray outside. Excuse me. So let's just go ahead and start the day off right with a little bit of art. I'm going to make this go a little bit quick. I'm mainly not going to be trying to do anything super spectacular. I just want to do something fun, something exciting, something like a little bit cool to show you that with pen and ink, you don't have to just do hatching and cross hatching every single time. There is other stuff that you can do. Let me show you what I mean. Let me just get this attached. Excuse my giant fingy. There we are. Okay. Gonna lower that down just a tad. Help you see easier. There we go. Okay, I think I can lower that down even a little bit more. Perfect. Okay, so this is at a little bit of an angle so that my giant hand isn't going to be in the way the entire time. I'm just going to go ahead and start with a nice circle. My paper is squared off, basically. It's a little bit more square than anything else, because I didn't need a huge amount of space for a drawing like this. So I'm going to rough out a nice quick circle. Because the nice part with a squared off page is that I can pretty easily fill in the whole space without having to leave a whole bunch of dead areas. Again, you can see just how messily I draw initially. Because it doesn't matter, I draw lightly so I can erase it anytime I want to. If you spin your circle all the way around, it's much easier to tell what spots maybe need to be fixed up for yourself. Spinning the paper when it comes to pen and ink and drawing in general is always a good idea. Helps you see things from a different perspective, literally, haha. All right, I'm gonna grab myself one of my favorite outlining supplies, that being one of my Kuretake Bimoji pens. This is all in Japanese, so I can't read it. Some people probably can, I can't. But this is a flexible nib pen that glides along the paper really well. The more pressure I exert, the heavier the line becomes. I could just use a template to draw this, of course. But I always find it more interesting to see someone's actual circle that they drew instead of seeing the circle they drew from a template or from a guide. Because this looks much more natural to me. I want to see the artist's skill more so than I want to see the exact same perfect circle drawn every single time. But of course, that's just a highly personal thing. Just my opinion. It's kind of like when I am teaching up at work. I will tell my students if they ask me if they can use a ruler, and I say, no, I'd rather see your line. I want to see the line that your hand makes, not the line that the mechanical ruler makes. Because if you use a template too, it's good to start off with, but in my opinion, it's better to force yourself to learn how to draw these things, to draw circles, to draw straight lines. Because if you continue to just use a ruler or a template, you don't have to grow. Because why should you? You just have the perfect line every single time. I'd rather learn to draw a circle myself. So you can see it's not a perfect circle, but I like it overall. It feels like my circle. That's the thing. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry for just a hot second. So we're going to be doing a mountain range over the majority of this paper here, and behind the mountain range is going to be a moon. And we're going to do it all with very minimal actual hatching and cross-hatching shading. Majority of that's going to be reserved for the moon that's going to be back there. Okay, so this should be pretty dry by now. So I'll go ahead and erase it out. Kneaded eraser, my friends. Best thing you can ever have. All right, so let's go ahead and draw the mountain range in. So to do so, I'm going to start by roughing in the basic spots that I want the mountain range to be located. So it's going to occupy about that much of the page. The moon, I'm going to say the moon is going to be here. That works for me. Now I can start laying out the individual mountains themselves. So for example, this mountain's going to go here, and then maybe there's the valley right there. Maybe from there another mountain comes up and off the page like that. Then of course we can split up the mountain into little additional bits and pieces here, which we're only doing with lines. We're dividing everything up with lines, not with anything else. So let's have this part of the mountain split off into a separate mountain all on its own. Maybe it goes to about here. Then maybe there's another mountain split right here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different mountains already, and we're not doing any tangents. A quick thing about tangents, a tangent is when you have one object and then another object that both have points on their lines that end at the exact same spot. So an example would be if this line for this mountain ended right here where this other mountain is starting to go. Doing so means that these two now do not look separated at all, and it doesn't look like it's three-dimensional space because this line is intersecting directly with the other line. So instead, we have this mountain end down here, away from the top of that line, which instantly gives a better sense of 3D space. Let's continue to divide this mountain up. We're just playing fast and loose, dividing up parts of the mountain here and there, trying to avoid tangents as we go. All of our lines are not going straight up and down. They're all angling steepy. They're angling pretty steeply off to the sides, either moving this way or this way almost every single time. They're not going straight down, they're not going straight across. All right, we're doing pretty good so far. By making all of our lines sweep down to the left or to the right, we give a better sense of the idea that this is a mountain range that's been eroded by time and by the environment. Everything is sweeping down and pulling itself upwards or down and down at the same time. There's nothing super high, like level. So for example, this line could definitely be a little bit more steep moving downwards. Okay, I think that looks pretty good to me. So let's go ahead and ink this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my initial ink pass with one type of pen and then come back through and do something called line weight. So I'm going to do the initial pass through with a 0.3 sized pen, which simply means that the nib is pretty small. You can see there. The higher the number of the pen, the larger the nib is going to be. I want a small one first, so I can quickly get all of my lines translated into ink. I'm letting my pen stutter a little bit as I'm going, meaning that I'm not trying to get a super completely smooth line. Instead, I want my lines to waver back and forth just a little bit to complete the idea that this is a craggy, rocky mountain range where the lines would not be completely 100% smooth all the way. It helps a lot when you're going to be doing pen and ink drawing to be using a paper that is very, very smooth, meaning that if you run your hand across it, there's almost no texture or roughness to it. The smoother the paper, the easier your pen will slide right across that paper with minimal effort. I've seen a lot of drawings where people will be using apparently like really textured cold pressed paper. I don't really understand that myself. To each their own, I suppose, but you won't get a much better pen and ink experience than if you use a super nice and smooth paper. Okay, so that's going to do it for the initial inking of this piece, and I call it the initial inking because while this is all nice and inked up now, it's also very samey looking. We don't want to rely on just our shading or just our line work to make everything look different. We want to add what I call emphasis lines, or lines to make our piece look more visually interesting. So to that end, I'm going to go ahead and erase out my pencil from underneath. A good ink will dry pretty quickly. There we are. So what I mean by emphasis lines is the simple fact that I want to take my lines through here and I want to make some of them thicker and thinner, just to make things look more visually interesting and distinct. So what I mean is I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here to make it easier for you to see. Right up here, for instance, I'm going to use a 0.5 width pen, much thicker than the one I just used. Make sure the ink is flowing. Yep, flowing just fine. Then I'm going to come through here and basically re-ink over what I originally did, but only in some spots. So I'm going to add more ink here and make this line thicker up through there like so. Then I can come to the top, add a little bit more ink on the top, and then as I come across, I'm going to let my line fade away just a little bit. Adding depth here and there, making some spots thicker and thinner. You can already see just how much more visually interesting this looks. Much more appealing to the eyes, isn't it? Definitely. So let's continue. You can see I didn't continue my line all the way through the middle. I let it drift into the original line on both sides. Because you don't want to make the mistake of making everything in here all have the same line weight again. You want there to be variety. Remember, it is fun to do this, but don't go overboard. Also, any spots where the mountains come together, like for example here and here, is a good spot to add a little bit of extra tone. There you go, you can see a little bit better. Sorry, just got lost in the inking process for a little bit there. I just love inking, and I especially love using these pens. These are the Rotring Isograph pens. Most pens will have a felt or a brush nib at the tip there. These pens have a little, you can see it there, it's got a little wire that gets pushed up to release the ink. This is a metal chamber here. So what it basically means is that since there is no nib to get slowly crushed or a brush to get slowly pushed out of alignment from years of use, as long as I don't, like crush these or do something to physically, forcefully make them get destroyed, this pen is going to last, in actuality, for a lifetime. And all I have to do is refill it with ink every now and again, and then clean out this chamber every once in a while. It's my absolute favorite pen. You can see it glides like a dream. Once you get these, it's honestly pretty hard to go back to what I was trying to use before, because all I can think about is getting these back out and just inking with them again. Of course, this is also something that you can naturally do with a ballpoint pen if you want to, if that's all you have access to. Perfectly usable. In fact, I'll probably do a stream later on, since I'll probably be doing a lot more streams going forward, considering how, I'm stuck here. I'll probably do another pen and ink live stream later on where I use a ballpoint pen instead of these uber expensive ones, so I can show you that I can put my money where my mouth is and say you can do this with a ballpoint pen. Because as many times as I can say that, I think it would help a lot of people if they actually saw me do it instead of me just saying that you can. There we are. We're getting close to the end of the line weight segment. While it would, the question has been raised before, why would I do the initial inking, then erase, then do more inking on top of it? Why not do the line weight inking at the same time, like right away, instead of doing the initial inking first? Well, the reason for that is that that's my personal thing, is that I just like to do it in this cut up fashion because I feel like it makes it less stressful than me having to do the initial inking and the line weight inking at the same time. And the other reason is simply more practical, because a lot of the time I ink and then I want to do like coloring on top of it. But the issue is sometimes when I erase out my excuse me, when I erase out my pencil lines from underneath when I'm done, then I also end up taking off a little bit of the ink that was on top of my pencil lines. So if I do all of my line weight inking and then I try to erase it, even if it's good high quality ink, it can still be rubbed out a little bit by the erasing that I have to do. Because sometimes there's a lot of erasing because I do a lot of, sketching. So that means that I would effectively lose a lot of the inking that I already did, because it would be more like grayed out or muted, so I would have to go back in and touch up the ink anyway. So at that point, it makes more sense to me personally to just do a very light, quick inking, erase out the pencil lines so that my ink lines remain, and then come back in on top and start doing my actual line weight inking. So it's more of a practical thing, and it's just a personal thing too. It's just the method that I have developed that works for me. If it works for you to do both steps at once as one thing, good for you. You're better than I am. But we have now reached the ending of the line weight segment, which is quite exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of the pencil lines that I see I left that are going to bother me if they just stay there. There we go. Now to the exciting part, we're going to start giving this depth and dimension just through the way that we place down lines. Here we go. I'm excited. I'm excited because I love inking, man. I love it so much. Okay, so I'm going to be using a 0.3 for this. I also have a 0.2. I'll decide later if that's one that I need to use or not, but I think the 0.3 should work just fine. Whew. So the idea we're going to be going with here is that every single area inside this mountain is going to be inked with the lines going in a direction that is different than any of the areas around that are touching that spot. Easiest way to show you, to explain it, is to just show you. So why don't I start in this spot right here. I'm going to do a series of hatching lines that are all going slightly down to the right to cover that entire spot. Now, I need to do the spot right next to it, but I don't want my lines to be going this same direction, otherwise these two spots will blend into each other. So instead, I'm going to tilt my paper and make this set of lines go a different direction. Instantly, those two spots do not look the same. A, I put the lines closer together. B, put them going in a different way. So up here, I'm going to make these look different by A, making them go in a different direction than this, and B, spacing them apart a little bit more. So I'm going to tilt my paper so my lines are going to be going this way. And I'm going to space them out and also not have them go all the way to the bottom. See what I'm starting to get at here? Now all three look very different. Let's come over to this side. The lines are going to go this way now. There we are. Looking pretty good, I'd say. All right, let's keep it going. Let's go here. Straight down for these ones, I think. All right, next one right here. Let's have this go very far off to the side. And since this is going behind some of the crags here in front, let's have these lines go get packed up together like that. Progress is being made. Let's go here next. Came up from the top and the bottom there to give that a little bit extra attitude to it, a little bit of a different flair. I decided that this was looking a little bit bare, so I'm going to come back in, but just a little bit of additional hatching lines, all still going the same direction, but just making it look slightly different. All right, let's come here. Let's have these lines go like this. the key is cleanliness. Try to keep your pen strokes as nice and clean as you can. And make sure your lines are all going about the same direction and don't curve in this particular case. We don't need to worry about contour lines in this one because we're not trying to make this look like reality. We're trying to make this all look distinct from everything else on the page that's around it. So let's go here to this one here. Very, very packed together. Going straight off to the side. Zoom out a little bit. Let you see how it looks so far. Looking pretty good, looking pretty good. Excuse me. Let's move over to this side. Let's make this one. Okay, I want these lines to go almost straight up and down, so I'm going to spin this around. Excuse me. To make it easier for me to reach it without having to worry about accidentally putting my hand where my potentially still wet ink is located. Always try to keep your hands away from any part of your piece that might still be wet. And there we are. Excuse me. Goodness. All right, let's come to this one here. I'm going to have the lines come from the bottom here and fade away as it moves up to the top to make sure that nothing starts clashing. So I'm going to, since I know these lines are over here are going that way, I'm going to make these lines go this way. There we go. Next set of lines. Okay, so these ones are going straight down. These are going that way. These are going that way. So I'm going to make these just go slightly off to the side. Perfect. All right, let's move down to this big boy here closer to the front. Let's see. All right, I'm going to have these lines going slightly off to the left with lots of space in between. Perfect. All right, let's come to this section here, off to the side, very close together. Let's come to this section here. Going off to the left. I'm sorry, this is the right. I know my directions. Off to the upper right. Goodness. Hope you've been enjoying the glut of videos lately. I've had a great time making them myself. Nice to get back on the old YouTube train for just a little while. Though I do think the old YouTube train has definitely passed me by. I don't think I upload frequently enough for it to be very nice to me, which is fine. Let's have this spot go off to the right. All right. And now here, based on everything that I have going on here, and here, I think my best option for this one is to move off to the left pretty steeply. There we go. That stands out just fine. And then the final spot gets filled in like that. And with that, we have a very cool graphic style pen and ink drawing. It doesn't look like reality, obviously, mountains don't look like this, but the way that we applied our ink lines all throughout this piece makes it so that it's very easy to tell where the different spots of the mountain are located. So we still have a sense of 3D space, even though it doesn't look quote-unquote realistic. So let's finish the whole thing off with a little bit of work up in this moon here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab, again, my 0.3 pen. Actually, for this one, I'm going to use a slightly smaller one. I'm going to use my 0.2. The smaller the nibs are, the tinier the lines, and the more fragile the nib becomes most of the time, so just be careful. So I'm going to start applying just a little bit of detailing by just tapping my pen onto the paper in a method called stippling. Many little dots that come together to form a larger object. I don't want to go overboard with this, because this is the moon, so it's supposed to be further back than anything else. So I want to put just enough detail on here so that we know that this texture is supposed to be the pits and craters on the moon's surface. I'm going to put it here and there, not really touching the middle very much. This isn't hard per se, but it is time consuming is the only real pitfall of using stippling. It looks quite nice. especially when you pull further back and take a look at it. But it does take a while. You could achieve this same effect with hatching, but we've used hatching lines so much in this piece that it wouldn't really make sense to do hatching on the moon as well, not if we're wanting to give the moon a different texture than anything else that's appeared in this piece. Gonna add a little bit of darker elements down here, and maybe a little bit more up here. All right, I think that accomplishes my purposes just fine. You can see now when I pull back just how much of a different texture this is given than the rest of this because of the way that I applied the ink with little dots instead of lines. The last thing I think to do, give this a nice signature. And we're gonna call this stream done, ladies and gentlemen. I know nobody is watching this one right now because I can see my numbers up there, and the numbers are 0, and that is totally fine. I know a lot of people are doing other stuff right now, probably maybe, sleeping. Like the one that I've been spending most of my time with. This one has been chilling with me the whole time while I've been working on this stream. She's a very good girl, and I love her very much. Don't I love you, Sky? Yes, I do. You're the best girl. She is best girl. Okay, thank you all very much for watching the stream if you caught it a little bit while it was live, and otherwise, if you watch this later, thank you for watching, ladies and gents. Hope you enjoyed that little tutorial, and until next time, have yourselves a good day. Look at that face. Oh, look at that face. Oh, that's the best face. Yes, it is the best face. Come on, you can't say no to that face. Look at that face. See ya.